So we're here at our studio, and we're here live with Dean Webb, who's Executive Director of Faith Farm Ministries. I always want you to be more than the Executive Director. I want you to be the angel of the ministries, of something, because you're always got some situation that you have to take care of. But you also have a very big heart, Dean, and you always wind up telling me stories that kind of bring tears to my eyes and hopefully our listeners, because when it really comes down to pass, we have to raise funds for Faith Farm. We have to help these people that you have the contacts with that come there to be able to be taken care of, and it takes money. So why don't you tell us what you were so impressed with?
Well, I came to Faith Farm. The thing that got me from Atlanta down here to South Florida was when I saw the mix of the spiritual input into people's lives connected with the business enterprise, where the people in the program learned job skills, and they basically worked their way through the program. And the work that they did, whether they helped in a thrift store or whether they drove a truck to pick up donated household goods from people calling in, or unloaded it at the thrift store to sell, somehow all the ministry was funded on a day-to-day basis by all the efforts of the people who are in the program, and they learned job skills in the process. And I thought that was brilliant.
Oh yeah, no, that's what people always say, because people who really don't have much of a heart, they always say, well, why are we going to help all these people? They should know better than to drink too much. They're just lazy. They have all those answers, and I don't never agree with that. But on the other hand, the people who do need help do better if they are responsible.
Right.
That they can now give back in some way. But there aren't many organizations that are set up the way Faith Farm Ministries is.
No, it's very unique in that a lot of people we're a member of the Association of Gospel Rescue Missions, about 600 missions around the world. Excuse me, and most of them, most of their days are spent huddled trying to craft a direct mail letter so that we're just right to get an extra response this month for funding, and instead, we spend our time working with the students in the program side by side, our administrative staff working on the dock or working in the food service in the kitchen or working in the store or in help them in the loading dock or where the garage, wherever it is. We're working alongside of them, and our time is invested in the people coming through the program. So that's what I like about it, is that our involvement with them is far more direct than most ministries or most recovery missions, because we're working side by side. And the work project is the enabler that allows us to feed in their life. A lot of guys at our graduations will say, working alongside our administrative staff and just saying, hey, let me ask you about this, or what do you think about this, or I have this problem, and getting input into my life almost like a foxhole buddy, if you will, was far more special to me, to my direct need, than even all the classroom work that I sat through. So quite often that work alongside our people is more meaningful to them than the formal classroom room training they get.
And where did you get the word student, which I've always loved that you say students, because if they ask where you've been, I've been a student at Faith Farm. Right. That's a very, very important name.
Yes. And actually now that we the courses they go through for 9 months can get up to 9 college credits. When they leave, they can, if somebody asks them, well, what about this gap of 9 months out of your life? Where were you? I was going to college. I was going to a work therapy program and a recovery program. So it's a step up for them for that 9-month gap out of their life when we do a resume for them.
I know. I mean, see, that's all brilliant. And sometimes we talk about terms of, how you speak about people, but Faith Farm is not really what people think it is. And that's why I know you do a lot of advertising. You do try a lot of promotion that you work on, because people still, they don't get it. Faith Farm Ministries seems like it just could be some company with a big tent that they have all, their Sunday services. They have no idea what you are creating. And every time you come here, you always talk about a particular student that has really impressed you. And I know when you walked into the studio, you had this glow on your face when we said, what student are you going to talk about today? And it was a beautiful story.
Yeah, it just happened yesterday. I mean, that's the thing I love about my job. Every day is so refreshing. I get just new information. But the women in our program are on the Boynton campus, and that's where our corporate headquarters is of the three campuses, because it's halfway between the Okeechobee and Lauderdale, so I can get to either campus within an hour and 15 minutes drive. And so the women who come into the program, they start out kind of at the bottom of the totem pole. They'll clean the church building, they'll clean the offices, they'll empty the trash. They might help clean the kitchen, and then they work up to where finally they get training and they can work in the call center, taking calls for people wanting to donate. And so there's kind of a hierarchy. They work their way up to the better jobs. Anyway, well, there's a lady who's probably in her 40s.
Oh, wait, stop a minute. But these people are not getting paid. Everyone should know that.
No.
They don't get paid. What they're getting paid with is a room, board, and training.
And training, right. They go to classroom. They have
but
classroom work every day.
Everything's taken care of for them, right?
Everything's taken care of them. If they need clothes, they're given clothes. Whatever they need, all needs are taken care of, so they can focus on the training in the morning and the job trainings in the afternoon. So this lady was emptying my trash can, and she was in her 40s, and so I turned to her and I says, okay, this is about the fifth time you've come in here. You've got to have a story, and I don't know anything about you. Can you tell me just something about you and where you're from? She was from Florida. She said, my mother died when I was 4 years old. And she said, I was one of 8. And she said, there was no money, so I ended up going on the streets. Make a long story short, I ended up getting addicted to drugs. I started selling drugs to get the money to feed my addiction. I was arrested and incarcerated and put in prison. She said, in the meanwhile, I had a son, and he was about 6 months old. When he was about 6 months old, an attorney came in to me and said, here's a piece of paper I want you to sign. And she says, well, I don't read or write.
She didn't read or write.
She'd never been to school, So, and evidently the attorney knew that. Now, I don't know if this was the birth father or the state. I don't know who the attorney was representing. I didn't think to ask. I was so taken by the story. But anyway, she signed her ex and on the line, and basically found out that she had signed the rights to her son away, and she didn't know she was doing that, and she didn't find that out till she was trying to take care of him. They said, well, you have nothing to do with your son. She said, what do you mean? They said, well, you signed your rights away to him. And she said, no, I didn't. She thought she was signing for them permission to give him health care if he needed it, because he was only 6 months old at the time. So she came in and she said, when she came into Faith Farm, she was working, and so one day here's the main story. Someone in prison had given her a Bible and said, I know you don't read, but if you will just try to make your way through every day, pick this up, God will open up this up to you, and he will help you. Well, to make a long story short, she said, to this day, when I pick up a Bible, I can read the Bible. But if you gave me a novel or a newspaper, I can't read a word. She said, and I don't understand it. It's just like a miracle. I can read the Bible. She said, so I just read and read and read the Bible. And I said, wow. So it was almost like it sounds weird, but it's kind of like a supernatural thing that occurred to allow her to read the Word of God, read the Bible, but she can't read anything else. I had your magazine on, and I said, well, can you read this? And she said, no, I can't read this. Boomer Times magazine. So she has, in there, she started reading that God would answer prayer. And so she started praying that she could find her son. Well, evidently, she came into our controller's office, which is right across the hall. And Claudette says, I just feel an urge that I need to pray with you about something. Do you have a need? And she says, yeah, I just, I found out the whole story about my son. I've just been thinking about him, and I don't know where he is. And she said, I read in the Bible about how if you trust God, that, you will be redeemed and your whole household will be saved. And she said, I worry about my son. He's about 24 years old now. So she said, okay, well, let's pray that you'll find your son. So she said, well, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to use a computer or anything. So anyway, Claudette, our controller, prayed with her. Well, I don't know if Judy was walking by or what, but anyway, somehow Judy got wind of that, and she says, well, you can find just about anybody on Facebook. And evidently she went on and she gave me the name, and she went on Facebook, and all of a sudden she saw her son for the first time. He was on Facebook. He was 24 years old, and she just wept because she hadn't seen him since he was 6 months old.
What name did he take?
Well, he had the name that she gave. In the paperwork she signed away, they had his correct name, so she knew what his name was that she gave him, and then so that he evidently never changed his name. So anyway, Judy helped them go in and put on Facebook a little story about her, that your mother is looking for you. She used to be an addict. She's no longer an addict. She did not intentionally sign her rights away for you because she couldn't read at the time. She did not know what she was signing. And here's a number. If you would like to contact your birth mother, she's not going to pressure you, but we want you to know here's how you get in touch with her. So this happened yesterday. So Anita, I have no idea what's going to come of this.
And this is now on Facebook.
Yeah.
How do I find this on Facebook? Okay, we have to. Judy will help me.
She can help. Yeah,
because I could ask Judy, because this person doesn't have a Facebook page, but it must have been done through Judy's Facebook page. So if I get onto Judy's Facebook page,
I don't know.
That's probably how it is.
I don't know a lot about social media. I really don't have time to do that.
Judy does a lot of it. I see it all the time.
But I know this. I do know this. If you go on Facebook, it says search, and you can type in somebody's name. Anybody can once you get logged on to Facebook, and evidently that his picture came up and information about him. He obviously had a Facebook page.
So now she got to see her son at this age,
24.
And what do you think, that he's going to get in touch with her? I would think so.
I have no idea. I do know this from my dad running an orphanage with hundreds of children over the years. There is like a homing pigeon instinct for a child to know who their birth mother and father are. We've had records in our home. We've come home from a church on a Sunday night and had our home broken into, and people prying open files trying to find out who their birth mother or father was, people that had been through our orphanage. And so I know there's just a passionate thing to find out about them. So I can't say that he will, but he very well could, contact her, and she could get contacted with him. She says, I feel so bad about my life and, the way I've lived my life until Faith Farm. She said that I'm not going to really push him. She says, because if he's embarrassed, I can understand that. And about my past or what happened, how he ended up being homeless, whatever. So she said, I'm not going to push it. I'm just going to trust God at the right time.
That's going to be a story. Talk about graduation if that happens, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, so she now, how long has she been with you? Probably not too long, because she's
she's in class 3, so she's been about 18 weeks.
That she's doing this, and is she happy?
Oh, yeah. She has the greatest, happiest countenance. That's one thing that attracted me to her. A lot of times I'm on the cell phone. When the women come in to empty the trash or whatever, and or they'll empty my, what do you call it, your shredding machine, it gets full, and little things like that. And so, but I always noticed her countenance. She's just always smiling and happy and stuff. So I was not, when she walked in, I was not on the computer. I was actually talking to Claudette, my controller, standing in front of my desk, and when she came in, and then somehow she got to talking about praying with her and the whole story, and then so I asked her about her, and she tells the whole story while we're standing there.
That is just it's just
but see, here's
so
the thing.
lovely.
When you started the program, you said something about people say, well, you just should be more disciplined.
Right.
The thing is, those of us who had great families and great upbringing, we don't have any concept of the hell people have been through. We have no concept of what got them to an addicted state. The stories of these people are so horrendous. And, and my father-in-law used to, when he'd see a bum on the street, he'd always say, there, but for the grace of God, go I.
Mm-hmm.
And he would say that
agree.
every time. And
I think that's true.
And I do too. And so I used to be one of those people, like you said, well, you just need to be more self-disciplined. How could you, drink enough that you would become an alcoholic? Or why would you ever take your first drug? You can't get addicted if you don't take your drug, the first time. And I was like that. But, I've heard so many stories that my compassion is such that I don't know what I would do if I'd been in these people's place. I every time something happens to me or I face an obstacle, I hear little tapes in my mind. My dad going, "Son, you can do anything you want to. You can attempt anything you attempt. If you drive hard enough, blah blah blah." Well, see, I know that these people, their tapes that they hear, you no good thing. You never amount to anything. You're just scum. What makes you think you can do that? And that's the tape they hear playing. And so I don't know. I don't know what I would be like if I had had negative inputs or a horribly negative family situation like that, growing up. I don't know how I would be. So I just, my heart goes out to them because there, but for the grace of God, go
right.
on.
But it's interesting you say that, Dean, because you know that I have triplet grandchildren, and I have always praised. I praised my son Chandler. I've always praised children, but when we first started, when they were walking, what they were doing, Stefania, especially Stefania, and then my son, everything was perfect. Anything they did, it was always, we love you, it's okay. And Bill, though, coming from, I guess, the other way, even though he has a good heart, he would always say, "Why is she letting them run? Why is she doing this? They shouldn't be on the table." But yet, the one thing I said to him, "Bill, you told me about your life before. It wasn't that way when Chandler was coming up, but before, when he had 6 children, there are always fights. There's never a happy mealtime. There's always fights." That's not true here. They never yell at the children. They may say, "No, you can't do that," and they grab them and they put them somewhere else, or they kiss them as they're walking away. And sometimes there's a little bit strong words, but it's never negative. And I said, "Bill, as long as those children have that love and that care, they'll straighten out." Now, of course, they're 8, and it's different.
Yep.
But that beginning, and it's just what you said, when people take their children, and you've seen sometimes even in the supermarket, they smack them and they say, they say bad things, and I have to just walk by. I can't even hardly stand it, and I can't interfere.
Yeah.
But they're doing just what you said. That child will live with that.
Yep, absolutely.
And they won't hear that positive thing when they get in trouble. We all have troubles. We all have things that we had to make decisions. Should we not?
Yep.
And we always get that, what we grew up with. And like this young woman that you said that she was so young when, her mother died, and then I don't know, why there wasn't someone else around, but obviously there wasn't someone. And for her, and I want to talk about the men and the women. A lot of the men have very sad stories.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they were beaten. But, and I don't know if it's because I'm a woman, but you take a young girl, just like we're hearing in Nigeria now, you take a young girl, whether she's 8 or 10, and you start doing things that are either sexual or bad or mean. It's very different than with a man, I think. Although there are a lot of men, of course, we heard about things happening with it, and all that. I don't go into that. But somehow for me, the women, I don't know how they get over it. I don't know. And you do have a lot of women who've been out on the streets and all.
Yep.
How one does that, I don't know, Dean.
I really don't know. I tell you, I've often said it's a good thing I'm not God, because the second I would see somebody molest a young child or something, I just strike them. I take them out of the gene pool.
See, I feel the same way.
Because I see the results of their whole lifetime of struggle, trying to overcome the psychic, the emotional damage, the physical damage, the psychological damage that they go through. It's just unbelievable. So, I see people at Faith Farm, and I just look at them and I say, I wonder what their story is. Now, I get to hear it at graduations, but, with hundreds of them, I don't get to know them, like I put into my staff and let them feed into the students. But every time I hear a story, I'm just blown away by, that they're even standing and walking and talking and appearing somewhat normal.
I think that's why there must be great applause for your organization when you think about you're taking people who were taken just like this young woman, and men who've been all the things that are the worst that many of us could hardly even fathom to think about. And now many of them are becoming upstanding citizens. They love themselves first, and it's through your programs, and it's through your love and your care and what you teach them. It is such a special place, Dean.
I know it. One of the things that we stress really, really hard is forgiveness. These people have been so oppressed. And, if they can't genuinely, at some point, they have to genuinely forgive for the abuse. We had a young girl, and I won't mention her name on the air, but she was from a rural mountain state. But anyway, her father had abused her all of her life, and she knew nothing but that. And when she came into our program,
and why did she come in the program? Was she
she alcoholic, just trying to get away from her stuff. It was horrible life. And so she would drink to anesthetize herself against her real life situation. And she got away from home and came to Faith Farm, and she slept in 2 and 3 layers of clothes. She slept in her socks and boots. She was so afraid of being molested that she just had multiple layers of clothes. It took us months in the women program for her to put on a nightgown and to go in the bed to sleep. I mean, she was just so fearful. And one day she came to us, and she was they had diagnosed her with cancer, and it was just like, how much more can you take? Well, at that point when they were thinking about doing the operation, she got word that her father he was deathly ill, and so we gave her leave to go up to visit her father. And
that's the forgiveness story, right?
She stood by his bedside and forgave him for all the abuse he'd done to her.
Whoa.
And genuinely forgave him.
That's from your program, that she learned that at the program, because she never could have done that before.
Because we tell people, if you're hating somebody for what they did to you, it doesn't affect them. It affects you. And the Bible talks about a root of bitterness springs up inside, and that's what it is. They don't even know they don't know what you're going through. I mean, they've done the nasty deed and moved on. They have no idea, but it's tearing yourself up on the inside. So you have to somehow, to be able to receive from God, receive our help, receive from Faith Farm, receive the instruction, at some point to get whole and clean, you have to experience forgiveness for everything that you've been through. And we push that really hard. Well, she genuinely stood there with tears and forgave her father for all the molestation and sexual abuse and everything. Well, when she came back after the weekend, and he passed away, so it was really good that she was there. She came back, and when she went in for the final check before they operated, they said, your cancer's gone. You don't have any cancer. You have no sign of cancer. She was totally healed. Now, she'd asked our pastor to lay hands and pray on her for healing, but I think it was that combined with the forgiveness that she went through with her father that totally cleansed her from the inside out. And she had no sign of cancer to this day. And
is she still with? Is she with you? Or
no, she's gone on to minister to up in Virginia or someplace.
And so she's doing well.
Yeah. And
that's a wonderful story.
So we push real hard for forgiveness, because we know that if you don't do that, you're carrying maybe not physical actual disease cancer, but you're carrying like a cancer inside. Your stomach's in knots. You're carrying really hate and unforgiveness around. And we don't believe you can receive the total blessing from God that he wants you to have until you get your system clean and until you've honestly experienced forgiveness and genuinely forgive people.
Well, you think about, we just, I mean, after these stories, I don't even want to talk about the Nigerian girls who've been taken away, but when you think of it, forgiveness must be the most difficult of anything, because
it's probably the most difficult thing to do. It must be
of anything, because they can't. How can you?
Because the reason it is because the anger you're holding is genuine, and it's deserved. You should be angry about what happened to you, and so it's not like it's not just a cavalier, thing. It's a deep-seated thing that you're genuinely upset about what happened to you with good reason. But the problem is that person doesn't know it. The person you hold awed against or angry, they're going there on their merry way. It doesn't affect them.
So what happens to those people who did these ungodly deeds?
I don't know. I'm not God.
Well, no, I would have to say that they have to live. That's right. They have to have something inside them that is not very pleasant.
Yeah, I just can't imagine.
That's why he did it. Probably most people, I always want to believe that people are basically good and that they, things happen to them. So if this person, they must have been, pardon the expression, in hell and tormented to even do that.
Yeah.
I have to believe that because I don't think it's normal for someone to do this to a person, no matter what it is.
Well, one thing, there's a scripture that says the sins or patterns of the father are visited to the third and fourth generation. So anytime you find abuse, if you will go back, you almost always find abuse to them and abuse to them, their father. And at some point, we believe that at some point you can break that bondage, if you will, that chain, that link, that chain to your past, if you will really give just genuine forgiveness and say, God, I forgive them, and I forgive them, and get clean, if you will. I believe you can break that stronghold of those abuses that go from generation to generation, because I've seen it a lot.
It's funny that we should be talking about this, and I think we've run out of time, but until they tell us to shut up, we'll have to keep going. I have a very serious, close person, and that person has some very serious forgiving to give, and she is suffering with a lot of mental distraught, and I'll bet if somehow she could forgive this person who's done actually it isn't anything as bad as you're saying, but in her mind it was. Yeah. She carries that around with her. She's 60 years old. That's why she's suffering with things. Yeah. And I'm just thinking to myself, so she has to go somewhere to get to give forgiveness, and we have to go. And I know that.
That's one of the strongest things that we struggle with. That's one of the key things is forgiveness.
Dean, it's been wonderful. Everyone go to faithfarm.org. This is the way that you're going to get helped, and your friends, please don't call. Go to their website, faithfarm.org. They're always doing so many great things. Contribute what you can, and if you know anybody that needs their help, please get on the web. Thank you, Dean. It's always such a pleasure.
I appreciate it.